developer on the interactive news team at the New York Times. My handle on most social media is Eric Andrew Lewis, which is short for my full name, Eric Andrew Lewis, not Eric Andrew Lewis, which I have been asked before. So we use Kubernetes, at least on my team at the New York Times. The New York Times is a huge tech company. My team, Interactive News, is about 20 people. And it's just one slice of some of the infrastructure that we have. So this is going to be more or less just talking about, our approach to Kubernetes, like particulars of how we've employed it for our needs, and maybe like a little back and forth. Like, it would be great if you think we're doing things terribly, like let me know. A little bit of an open conversation. A couple of the things that we produce, generally the New York Times likes open source, and we try to at least put things on GitHub quietly when we think things might be useful to other people. So Interactive News is a team of developer journalists assisting, working closely with news desks to create novel forms of coverage. So some of the output that comes from our team, a really good spiritual example is the backpack, which was created in 2012 during the presidential race back then. There would be photojournalists like Pulitzer Prize winner Josh Hainer on the ground with a camera, taking 200, 500 pictures, and then turning around, opening a laptop, and then plugging in an SD card and uploading it to our media server. And obviously, when you're covering breaking news, that's a really long 8 minutes to get assets uploaded to the internet. So my colleague Ben Koski invented this backpack that has a Linux computer running in it that hooks up to the camera and automatically uploads images. So this is an example of a really hands-on thing that has come out of interactive news. Obviously, most of what we do is actually for the internet rather than working hands-on, making computers essentially. One tool that we made recently is parses election data from APIs to feed graphics like this down to county level information about voting results. And this is an example of quizzes that we've been starting to step into making. This one came out around the time of the Westminster Dog Show, which gives you pictures of dogs, portraits, and you can listen to barks of dogs and try to match which bark would match which dog. So this kind of pushes the idea of story form in the modern age. So we end up with lots of applications. Mostly on our team, I would call them admin applications, where we're helping to create tools for journalists to produce targeting HTML and JavaScript, rather than us serving a lot of public applications. Although right now, for instance, in our Kubernetes infrastructure, we're serving the New York Times in Spanish. And that's the only public application, because most of what we're doing is admin applications that our clients are journalists. And this kind of fits in with the idea of the Tetris screen metaphor that's common in Kubernetes of, we have a bunch of things and we're just going to drop them into one single infrastructure stack. So in general, we're mostly web-leaning developers on interactive news, not sysadmins at heart, although we have some infrastructure people on the team. And in a deadline, we're working in deadline-driven environments where developers need concentrated responsibility. We can't really work in good contexts where we have hard dependencies on other teams to handle, for instance, our infrastructure, because we need to fix the varnish config immediately because it's on production and serving to users. So this builds up into a desire for us to have a self-service, dev-friendly application platform. Self-service to go along with this idea that we want like a lot of responsibility on our application and the ability to debug it and understand from DNS resolution to the actual dynamic language that might be behind our application what's going on. And dev-friendly because we're mainly web developers and we like user interface and the internet. So a brief history of our infrastructural decisions probably align with the general like mythology of containers, where we started out just with virtual machines and kind of worked our way towards more automated configuration and also sandboxed places for applications to live. One thing that's been really awesome about containerization in general has been that it breaks down the barriers between being a developer and being a system administrator. For instance, yesterday, my coworker Jeremy asked me about he thought that query strings weren't ending up in his application for some OAuth authentication, and he had deployed it, and he was wondering if, just looking at it, I could tell if anything's wrong. I actually set up last week a little repository that includes a Docker Compose file that has a Varnish Docker file and a Node Docker file, so that you can run two commands on the command line and have Varnish running, edit your VCL, and immediately kind of see the differences. And this is probably my favorite thing about containers, that the onboarding process and the lower barrier to entry to play with new software. My friend Ashley works for NPM, and she came to this realization last week when she got the NPM registry running, presumably in a Docker file that she's planning on sharing with other people in case they want to do the same thing. I'm a computer programmer. I like doing it, and I like having fun doing it. So the more we can make that an enjoyable experience, the better. So from a little bit of the history I showed you previously, we moved obviously from virtual machine, like single app instances, to moving on to Kubernetes in this new infrastructure. There's a couple of prickly parts, specifically that we found on our team about virtual machines versus something like Kubernetes. One of those is that apps in virtual machines are inherently expensive, and they literally have a price tag on them of 2 cents an hour. So this can easily create like hierarchical processes that you need to get something new running, because it costs money. NVMs require configuration. You might have to go to one of your infrastructure engineers that has the rights and the credentials on whatever cloud provider you have to set up an application. And you might need to set up DNS rules to even visit your application. And compare that to what you can do in Kubernetes. Spinning up an application can be a very nominal fee, and it actually doesn't have a price tag associated with it. It's just more CPU cycles running on one of the nodes in your cluster and a larger memory footprint on it. And to try to make this process more self-service, we ended up creating an admin dashboard for Kubernetes, which has some similarities to the Kubernetes dashboard that David spoke about, and I believe other people will be speaking about tomorrow. And this is the homepage, but if we dive into an application, basically in our mind, an application is a service and a replication controller. Obviously, I have to update these slides in a Kubernetes 1.2 world because the replication controller is a replica set now. But basically, laser pointer. By running an application and a service in our system, we've set up like wildcard DNS so that just the existence of a service and an RC gives you this URL that you can visit your app on internally in our network, so that takes the effort of spinning up an application out of the go to someone and ask for a VM to be set up. You can just run kubectl, deploy nginx, and have it running and visitable in your browser. And we expose some of the primitives of, just to give some visibility, about what the service is, the replica sets running, and a little bit of interactivity in managing those. Primarily because kubectl is awesome and needs to exist, but also users want user interface, and it's I think a next step that we can make with just making this easier, making onboarding easier, and especially for the users in our system that aren't necessarily infrastructure engineers, and the future of people running containers are probably may not even understand that their stuff is running in a container on shared hosting, and it would be awesome to make that experience easier for them. So we also handle deployments in our meta application. We have, by convention, just designed these to work off of Git tags, off of a GitHub repository, so that you say that you tag your repository. We have a private container registry, image registry, that'll build it, and then when you go to deploy that version, it'll show you what commits will actually land that weren't existing in the previous version, and interactively let you deploy it with a rolling update under the hood. We also expose the capability to add secrets to your application, so that hopefully you don't need to go anywhere else other than this dashboard in order to configure and have everything you need running in a usable manner for your app. And like I mentioned, we want to start using the Kubernetes dashboard. We had a great meeting with David a couple weeks ago discussing, where are we at, where can we go with this, and it seems like this will be the way to go, and contributing to that project will be a future, rather than building our own custom app that has a lot of opinionated decisions that we've put into it. So here we'll step into a couple technical choices that we made that are unique to our setup. Generally, requests go through an HTTPS terminator, and then varnish for public traffic, or if it's just an admin app, we skip full page caching, and into what we titled a Kubernetes DNS Reverse Proxy, which should probably just be called a router. And that's that we've released on GitHub. Essentially what it does is gives you the default service domain names for your application that we saw earlier, so that, because that's not going to be out of the box with Kubernetes, you have to do a little setup. We have the Sky DNS add-on installed so that services are exposed internally within the network over something like this, where this is the name of the service, and then the namespace, and then the service and your cluster domain suffix. So that we can translate incoming requests from what we want to expose to our users into which container you're going to route that request to. This is very similar to Ingress, and I'd like to follow up and see if we should just be using Ingress. We do a couple other things inside of this application as well, which is path-based service routing with defining a prefix for your for the URL and a host name that will map to a container, and also redirects and static asset proxies for something that's living in a cloud on something like S3. And also our what's titled Kubernetes secret env. We're really good at news, not so much at naming GitHub repos, but this will a small application that is a wrapper for executing a program that will inject it with the secrets that have been configured for your application, and then make that program have your config ready for you. So that's my talk. Thanks for coming. Does anybody have any questions? We use AWS, and we run on CoreOS machines. I should mention, I've worked on some of our infrastructure, but I'm probably, I would say, like the second or third on the list of people that have familiarity with it. So I can't speak directly to it, but I know that there's familiarity with CoreOS in general in our team, so that just kind of led to those choices. And, you know, big tech companies sidle up with a cloud provider, and then that's the one they use for like 15 years. So that's why we're on AWS. Yeah. Yeah. Well, so that's a great question. Just to repeat for the camera, will the Kubernetes dashboard be able to like handle everything that we do in our meta application? Just to go back to some of the stuff we do here, I think that things like deployment, although I could imagine having, you know, Kubernetes deployment, the actual resource type in Kubernetes available and editing that, as that's like a first-class citizen. But the way that we do deployments is very opinionated based on you know, our workflow and the way that we tag things. So that's something that I don't think we'll ever like stop doing, I guess. But I think the more that we can expose just like read-write capabilities with the Kubernetes resources of, you know, secrets, ingress control, etc. Basically anything you can do with like kubectl. And this is just my own opinion. It would be great to do in a web UI that would give you like all the capability you need to do. In the back? Sure. The scale is about, we have 30 applications running on our infrastructure right now. We have a lot of applications in general that are still on old infrastructure that we'd like to move over. But I actually really liked, Kelsey said earlier, like initiatives are not a good idea and initiatives fail. So we haven't really like said we're going to move everything immediately in the next like 2 months. And we're taking it slow, obviously, because pragmatism is good. But yeah, sure. We're really generally moving towards like idealized infrastructure. Like for instance, before Kubernetes hit 1.0, we were bootstrapping applications with fleet services in containers, and I think a month ago we closed down that cluster completely. And obviously we still have a lot of stuff running. Big news organizations, you know, we have the 2012 Olympics like front ends that still have to serve. So eventually, in an ideal world, we'll have everything in like one infrastructure place at some point in the future. Yeah. And then you can ask another. So we're not running any state in Kubernetes at the moment, and we just use cloud provider services to handle that at the moment. Yeah. but partially just because of like pragmatism and like time constraints. And although I am very interested in hearing like good solutions to the problems, we'll I guess wait until like we've. It seems like a short path to get there. I guess. Yeah. So we have static scaling, and we'll tune replicas depending on traffic patterns that we have. Yeah. Yeah. Currently, we are bootstrapping the installation of Kubelet and running the API server, et cetera, via Fleet. But I was actually chatting with John from CoreOS because to see what the best practice is there. And he recommended like bootstrapping via Rocket. I have to look into that a bit more. We just talked about this an hour ago. But essentially, you want a way to version control what you're running Kubernetes as. And I guess bootstrapping from Fleet seemed like a usable option for the moment. I haven't done that, so sorry, I can't speak to that. But let's talk later. Yeah. Yeah. We just pipe everything to I think it's Librado for just monitoring, and then logging through another like third-party provider, Papertrail, for just tossing everything from the container. Yeah. Cool. Thanks again. Yeah.
Wow, we have a lot of free time. Do you guys want to do like an ad hoc panel? Who wants to come up here and do a panel? You just want to be a part of everything, don't you? Come on up. That's one. One more person. Two. All right, that's two people. Mike and David. You guys going to introduce yourself? Come on up. Bring those chairs. This is a bonus. This is not on the schedule. Neither was speakers finishing early, but you live and you learn. All right, sit here, sit here. Come on, come on, come on. I need one more person because this doesn't look very panel-y. One more. No. One more person. Who's using Kubernetes? Come on, you, right here. Come on, you volunteered. Oh, you didn't. Anybody wants to come up here and be able to field questions about Kubernetes? Woo! Give this guy a round of applause. All right. Here, you can grab that chair. Thank you. All right, you'll share this. So we're going to do this panel style. You go from here to here and introduce yourselves and why you think you can answer questions about Kubernetes. And it's okay to be a beginner. That's totally fine. Start that way. Pass the mic.
Afternoon, Chris Jackson, run the cloud product engineering team at Pearson. We started using Kubernetes in September. I probably can't answer many of the questions, but there's some people in here that can bail me out if I need them to.
All right, you can definitely use a lifeline.
I'm David Ronchek. I run product management for GKE and Kubernetes, and I can answer questions because I know you. And you can answer questions.
All right, cool. One of my colleagues at Google.
Hi, I'm Mike Metrall, a product architect at Rackspace, and I lead R&D in all sorts of containers and Kubernetes integration work. And I just launched CoreCube.com on Monday, which is a community resource for education and instructive information. So check it out. And I've been following the project since its inception.
Awesome. So what we're going to do is we're going to just do a lot of Q&A. And if you guys are dead, I'll just make up questions. They probably won't be as good as the questions you would field. So let's do this. Let's just ask anything about Kubernetes. I think we have a nice range of the future of Kubernetes, where it's going, what we think about it, what we've compared it with, anything technical to the high level. So you guys ready for that? You guys are like, yeah, we got some questions. All right, so who wants to start? This person.